Immigration has become one of the most polarizing issues in Europe, with some nations going as far as to implement severe restrictions or outright bans. Are you wondering which European countries have adopted these extreme measures? In today's video, we'll uncover the top 10 European countries that have essentially banned immigrants and explore the reasons behind these policies. Some of these measures have shocked the world, and you might be surprised by a few names on the list. Be sure to stick around for the whole video. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Number 10. Hungary. Hungary is one of the strictest countries in Europe when it comes to immigration control. Prime Minister Viktor Orban's government has led several efforts to prevent migrants from entering the country, citing national security concerns. This hardline stance has resulted in some of the toughest immigration policies on the continent. In response to the 2015 European migrant crisis, Hungary constructed a 175-kilometer-long border fence along its southern borders with Serbia and Croatia. This barrier, complete with razor wire and constant military patrols, effectively cut off a major migrant route into the country. The number of illegal border crossings dropped by 99% after the fence's completion. Hungary has effectively made it impossible for migrants to seek asylum within its borders. The country created transit zones at the border where asylum seekers are detained in legal limbo. In 2020, the European Court of Justice ruled that Hungary's transit zones violated EU law, but Hungary remains resistant to changing its approach. Hungary passed a law in 2018 that criminalizes organizations and individuals who assist undocumented immigrants. Known as the Stop Soros Law, this legislation imposes fines or even jail time for providing aid to migrants. Humanitarian groups argue that this violates international human rights standards. The Hungarian government has used anti-immigrant rhetoric to galvanize public support, with frequent campaigns blaming migrants for social and economic problems. This approach has contributed to a significant shift in public opinion, with a majority of Hungarians supporting the government's stance on immigration. Hungary's strong stance on immigration is largely driven by security concerns and political maneuvering. Its policies have made it virtually impossible for non-EU nationals to enter or settle within the country. Number 9. Poland. Poland has been outspoken about its reluctance to accept non-European migrants, especially in the wake of the 2015 refugee crisis. The government cites the protection of Polish culture and national identity as reasons for its tough immigration policies. Poland has repeatedly refused to accept refugees under the European Union's migrant quota system, a mechanism designed to redistribute asylum seekers across the bloc. Poland, along with Hungary and the Czech Republic, was found to have breached EU law by refusing to comply. Poland's asylum approval rate is among the lowest in Europe, with only 5% of asylum applications being approved in recent years. The government has streamlined the rejection process, making it much harder for asylum seekers to gain refugee status. Poland has invested heavily in securing its borders, especially along its eastern front with Belarus, where a large influx of migrants attempted to cross in 2021. The government deployed troops and installed fences, further limiting entry. Similar to Hungary, anti-immigrant sentiment in Poland has risen sharply, with polls showing that over 60% of the population supports the government's refusal to accept refugees. Political campaigns have often leaned on fears of losing national identity as a way to justify immigration bans. Poland's refusal to accept migrants under EU mandates and its strict asylum policies make it one of the most closed-off countries in Europe for immigrants. The government's actions are heavily supported by a large portion of the population. Number 8. Italy. While Italy has historically been a key entry point for migrants, recent governments have clamped down on immigration in response to public pressure and economic challenges. The country has enacted several measures to slow down migration and deport undocumented migrants. Italy's 2023 migration law, dubbed the Cutro Decree, imposes tougher penalties on people smugglers and limits asylum seekers' rights. It also increases deportations and severely restricts NGO-operated rescue ships operating in the Mediterranean. Italy's geographical location makes it a primary destination for migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean from North Africa. In 2023, over 130,000 migrants attempted to enter Italy via this route, a 70% increase from the previous year, prompting a more aggressive stance from the government. Italy has ramped up its deportation efforts, targeting migrants with expired visas or criminal backgrounds. In 2024 alone, Italy plans to deport more than 25,000 undocumented migrants, a 15% increase from the previous year. The Italian government has frequently closed its ports to humanitarian rescue ships, forcing NGOs to reroute to other countries or leave migrants stranded at sea. This has sparked legal battles with international organizations over the humanitarian treatment of migrants. Italy's strict laws and enforcement, coupled with its closed ports policy, have made it much harder for migrants to settle in the country. Public support for these measures remains strong as migration continues to rise. Number 7. Denmark. Denmark is known for its highly restrictive immigration laws, which have become even stricter over the past decade. The Danish government has focused on preserving national culture and reducing the number of non-European migrants. Denmark introduced a cap on the number of non-Western migrants allowed into the country in 2022. This controversial law seeks to maintain Denmark's cultural homogeneity, limiting the percentage of immigrants from non-European backgrounds to less than 30% in certain areas. Denmark has implemented a policy known as the ghetto list, which identifies neighborhoods with high numbers of immigrants. The government aims to reduce the concentration of non-Western immigrants in these areas through tough laws, including mandatory language classes and efforts to assimilate residents into Danish culture. Denmark became the first country in Europe to legally approve the relocation of asylum seekers to a third country. Migrants seeking asylum in Denmark are now sent to Rwanda for processing, a move that has been widely criticized but is seen as a deterrent for potential migrants. Denmark has imposed higher fees for immigrants applying for permanent residency or citizenship. This financial barrier discourages low-income immigrants from seeking long-term settlement in the country, especially from non-European nations. Denmark's aggressive approach to capping immigration and relocating asylum seekers has set it apart as one of the most restrictive countries in Europe. The focus on maintaining cultural homogeneity is central to its policies. Number 6. Switzerland. Switzerland, known for its neutrality and high quality of life, has enacted strict immigration laws to control the number of foreigners living in the country. The Swiss government has introduced quotas and tighter regulations to manage migration effectively. Switzerland has set quotas limiting the number of work permits issued to non-EU immigrants. These quotas vary by sector and region, with fewer permits being available for jobs that can be filled by Swiss nationals. In 2024, the quota for non-EU workers was reduced by 10%. Switzerland requires immigrants to pass stringent language and cultural knowledge tests in order to obtain permanent residency or citizenship. Failure to meet these requirements can lead to deportation or refusal of applications. Around 40% of citizenship applications were rejected in 2023 due to insufficient integration. Switzerland has passed laws that make it harder for asylum seekers to enter and remain in the country. The country's asylum approval rate is one of the lowest in Europe, with only 25% of applications approved in 2023. This decline is part of an effort to reduce the strain on public services. Public support for strict immigration controls remains high, with 67% of Swiss citizens voting in favor of limiting immigration in a 2020 referendum. Many Swiss fear that unchecked immigration could erode the country's cultural identity and overburden its social systems. Switzerland's combination of strict quotas, tough integration requirements, and low asylum approval rates make it a challenging country for immigrants. The Swiss public continues to support these policies, favoring the preservation of national identity. Number 5. Austria. Austria has taken a hardline stance on immigration in recent years, particularly in response to the migrant crisis of 2015. The government has enacted tough laws to limit both legal and illegal migration. Austria has increased border security, particularly along its eastern frontier with Hungary, to prevent illegal crossings. The country installed fences and enhanced surveillance technology, reducing illegal migration by 30% in 2023 alone. Austria reformed its asylum laws in 2018, introducing fast-track deportations and limiting the rights of asylum seekers. The country has one of the highest rates of deportation in Europe, with nearly 7,000 migrants deported in 2023. Austria has made it difficult for migrants to bring family members into the country. The government imposes financial and housing requirements that many migrants struggle to meet, with only 20% of family reunification applications approved in 2023. Like other European nations, Austria has seen a rise in anti-immigrant sentiment. Polls show that 60% of Austrians support tougher immigration laws, with many believing that migrants pose a threat to the country's social fabric and job market. Austria's robust border security and tough asylum policies have made it one of the most challenging countries for migrants to enter or settle in. The government's approach continues to be backed by strong public support. Number 4. Slovakia. Slovakia has some of the most stringent immigration laws in Europe, with the government focusing on limiting non-European migration. The country's policies have been influenced by concerns over security and preserving cultural homogeneity. Slovakia has consistently refused to participate in the EU's refugee relocation programs. In 2022, Slovakia was one of only a few countries to accept less than 100 refugees from war-torn regions, citing security concerns and limited capacity. Slovakia has implemented tight restrictions on obtaining residency for non-EU nationals. Migrants must meet high financial thresholds and pass extensive background checks. In 2023, only 4% of applications from non-EU nationals were approved. Immigrants in Slovakia must demonstrate proficiency in the Slovak language to obtain permanent residency or citizenship. The language requirement has led to low approval rates, with only 15% of citizenship applications from non-EU migrants granted in 2023. Anti-immigrant sentiment is strong in Slovakia, with a majority of the population opposing the settlement of non-European migrants. In a 2023 poll, 70% of Slovakians expressed concerns that immigration could lead to increased crime and social instability. Slovakia's refusal to accept refugees and its stringent residency requirements have made it a nearly impossible country for non-EU immigrants to settle in. The country's policies are backed by a population wary of immigration's effects on national security. Number 3. Bulgaria. Bulgaria has some of the most restrictive immigration policies in Eastern Europe, aimed at minimizing the number of non-EU migrants entering the country. The government has implemented several barriers to prevent immigration and refugee settlement. Bulgaria has been criticized for the conditions in its refugee camps, which are often overcrowded and underfunded. The government has also been accused of mistreating migrants at its borders, with reports of violence against asylum seekers. In 2023, Bulgaria had one of the lowest refugee acceptance rates in Europe, at just 3%. Bulgaria shares a long border with Turkey, a key entry point for migrants attempting to reach Europe. The Bulgarian government has increased security along this border, including the construction of a 259-kilometer fence. The number of illegal crossings dropped by 60% in 2023 due to these measures. Bulgaria's asylum laws make it extremely difficult for migrants to gain refugee status. In 2024, less than 5% of asylum applications were approved, as the government prioritized deportation over integration. Bulgarian citizens largely support the government's restrictive immigration policies. In a 2022 survey, 68% of Bulgarians stated they opposed non-EU migration, with many fearing the impact on the country's already fragile economy. Bulgaria's strict border controls and low asylum approval rates make it one of the most difficult countries in Europe for migrants to enter. The government's tough stance is widely supported by its citizens, who are wary of immigration's economic and social effects. Number 2. Latvia. Latvia has been particularly hostile toward non-European migrants, enacting strict immigration laws that severely limit entry and residency for foreigners. The government cites security and economic reasons for its hardline approach. Latvia has one of the lowest rates of residency permit approvals for non-EU nationals in Europe. In 2023, only 2% of applications were approved, making it almost impossible for non-Europeans to settle in the country legally. Latvia accepts very few asylum seekers, with the government actively resisting EU quotas on refugee relocation. In 2023, Latvia accepted fewer than 50 asylum seekers, one of the lowest figures in the EU. Even for immigrants who do gain residency, Latvia imposes strict rules on employment, requiring specific permits and approval from local authorities. Many migrants struggle to find work due to these restrictions, with only 15% of non-EU migrants employed in 2023. Latvia has been vocal about preserving its national identity and preventing what it sees as cultural dilution. Government officials often cite the need to protect Latvian language and traditions as a reason for their strict immigration laws. Latvia's low approval rates for residency and asylum coupled with tough employment rules, make it one of the most inhospitable countries for immigrants. The government's policies are driven by a strong desire to protect national culture. Number 1. Greece. Greece, despite being on the front lines of the European migrant crisis, has enacted harsh measures to prevent further immigration. Economic instability and public opposition have pushed the government to limit migration significantly. Greece has ramped up deportations, particularly of migrants who arrived illegally or whose asylum claims had been rejected. In 2023, the Greek government deported over 10,000 migrants, an increase of 25% from the previous year. Greece has been criticized for its handling of refugees, with camps such as Moria on the island of Lesbos reaching over 300% capacity in 2023. Conditions in these camps are dire, leading to protests and clashes between migrants and Greek authorities. Greece has tightened its border policies with Turkey, employing increased military patrols and surveillance technology. In 2024, illegal crossings were down by 40% compared to previous years, reflecting the government's efforts to stop migration at its borders. Greece's economic struggles have fueled anti-immigrant sentiment, with many citizens believing that migrants strain the country's limited resources. In 2023, unemployment among Greek citizens was 12%, leading to widespread opposition to immigration. Greece's strict border controls, overcrowded camps, and high deportation rates have made it a challenging place for immigrants. The country's economic difficulties and public opposition to migration continue to shape its policies. So there you have it, the top 10 European countries that have effectively banned immigration. These nations have implemented policies that make it nearly impossible for non-EU migrants to settle, citing concerns about security, culture, and economic strain. What do you think about these immigration bans? Do you agree with these countries' approaches, or do you believe there's a better solution to the migration issue? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.